And I'm gonna have the time of my life editing this. Well, hey there, I'm Pauline. Welcome to my summer of 22, having no actual fun sailing, but doing a massive amount of boat work. 5 years ago, I bought my Ranger 28 without knowing much about sailing nor boating in general, but with great determination to learn. Up we go. Moving on up, fair wind. Moving on up. Who knows what we're gonna see on the bottom. Weeks Yacht Yard is a full-service marina building boats on the Great South Bay of Long Island since 1898. This place is full of history, which I'd love to share with you sometime. Since 2017, I've been refitting Fairwind, soon to be Ether, I think, while the boat was on the water, including ripping out the diesel engine to make room for an inboard electric motor, which has been recently installed, and I love it.
Well, maybe not. Let's try it a little higher. There's the rudder, there's the shaft. Prop, we're not on. Front tail looks fine, I gotta be honest with you. They look rough, I like that.
Yeah, simple size of a whole ecosystem down there. So yeah, 5 years since I bought it, plus another 2 at least from what the previous owner had told me. We're talking at least 7 years since this baby's bottom had seen the outside world. Since I'm learning about boats as I go, mixed with some questionable advice to just leave this fiberglass boat in the water because boats like to be in the water, maybe I wouldn't even be hauling out the boat this year, but I had a great motivation. In order to get the best out of the new motor, I was advised to just go ahead and replace the shaft, the prop, go dripless, and other fun stuff. I'll share details about that whole project in a separate video I'll make specific to the electric motor installation. From being someone who couldn't confidently hang a shelf to everything I've learned since owning this boat, I have come a long way, thanks to the internet, also asking the salty sailors I know, but sometimes you simply don't know what you don't know, right? And many of these lessons came the hard way and with the cost. Like, I knew I wanted a boat that would eventually be ready for a long ocean passage. So I found out that my Ranger has a lead fin keel, which gives it great stability upwind, but had no idea how the Great South Bay has so many shallow spots, and my 4.5-foot draft is not prohibitive, but definitely less than ideal. And that's where I currently live and would be doing most of my sail learning. On my own boat, that is, because most of the learning I did really about sailing was on my way from New York to the Bahamas in 2020 on a Tartan 10. Whole other story right there. Also learned that a bolted keel could use some regular inspections, especially after hitting bottom. So getting stuck, I surely did, maybe a half a dozen times. No idea how much those contributed to these Catalina Smile we've then acquired, and we'll see in a little bit. You can actually kind of see it here, but once it's all cleaned up, it'll definitely show. You see, Kevin Weeks' favorite job to do in a yard is power wash the boats. Little does he know I'm coming about to ask if I can do it myself.
We'll take some of this on and off cleanser, we'll sort of clean up the hull. Alright, into the next section. There you go.
Thanks, Kevin. Not sure if it's just my impression, but I thought that most of the gross stuff got stuck to the vertical surfaces underwater, not as much as the horizontal ones. Not sure if that makes any sense. And this is where I'd be spending my next few months juggling the full-time job I have as a residential solar energy consultant, and all it would take to bring the boat back to smooth and pretty. Oh, and help install the electric motor too. The whole looked like a sad mix of Brooklyn graffiti color-wise and Swiss cheese texture-wise, with many layers of anti-fouling paint overlapping. Strange how deceiving it is that in some spots it comes off quite easily, and one would think that that's not going to be a big deal, I'll just scrape it all off, but in other places it's just there, not going anywhere. And I tried. There's me slightly poisoning myself. So this is the area where I managed to do some of the sanding with the orbital sander, circular something. It goes round. So that's no bueno, but we can repair anything. Look at this rubber. I took off some of the fossilized stuff that was here. I'll be glassing that for sure. And this is the stuff that I sort of did, almost did. I think it's hopefully gonna get it to all back to white. Spoiler alert, my hull is actually yellow. So I gave up on breathing lead dust and decided that getting back to the gel coat was something I was not going to get involved with, so I hired a professional. I hope one day humanity comes up with something better to keep things from sticking to the surface of the submerged parts of our boat. It comes off so easily. Next I'm gonna give one of those ultrasonic things a try. What to do if you can't be inside and outside of the boat at the same time. Too much. I'm not gonna miss this at all. Goodbye, sun. Goodbye, tailpipe. Felt great to remove the old smelly exhaust pipe forever. Using a vice grip taped to the inside is how I've been installing and reinstalling a bunch of things like winches, solar panel, cleats, stanchions. Early morning getting ready for Glassbead blasting. Through holes, actually just the two cockpit drains and the hole for the shaft. I think that's it. The dust, I already took a big chunk out. I am just watching out of the safety of my own car here, all set up, and it looks like they're about to start. Got it all taped up. Some things on the bottom to make sure the dust stays in. There you can see my yellow gel coat and Kevin Weeks moving the boat stands around so the spots under the stands can also be brought down to gel coat. And there's Brian Gold of Golden Touch Blasting and his helper doing a great job wrapping it all up. This is like, it should be perfect for already starting. I mean, I'm just gonna wash it, right? And
you pretty much wash it.
How many layers do you think were?
Probably pulled off about 8-9 layers at least. Yeah.
Wow.
It definitely adds up.
And that didn't take that long at all, right?
A couple hours of blasting.
Very
It's more
cool.
the prep. You want to do the right prep job.
And I asked him about the astronaut suit.
The OSHA approved respirator,
Oh, okay.
helmet, pressurized
Nice.
filtered air.
And it's like the hose goes on your
It actually, the helmet pressurizes filtered clean air.
Wow. Is that sand or
Glass we
glass?
use. Yes, use glass. Yep.
Very cool.
Very, very low PSI. And you just take off the anti-fouling paint and renew the surface.
I had no idea that my boat was yellow underneath.
Yeah, yeah.
And the waterline too, like it
Exactly.
used to be.
The boot stripe was right over here. You can kind of see where you're gonna tape up to again. And that's the boot stripe.
Do you think I should tape up to here or just
All
go
preference.
with? Okay.
All preference.
Awesome. Much appreciated.
No problem. Good luck.
Thank you. Glass blasting the bottom of this boat has got to be the best buck I've ever spent on it. What he did in a couple hours would have taken me weeks sanding. Also, I would have poisoned myself and it wouldn't have come out as smooth as it did, for sure. I was making some dents there before. Now we have all the work ahead clearly revealed, along with the famous Catalina Smile, which almost made me cry. I cleaned and scraped off as much as I possibly could. This stuff is sort of rubbery. I don't know if it is 5200. Some pieces came off completely hard, like that it could break, like this here especially, very breakable, still a little flexible, and then some totally rubbery. So we inspected the bolts, which were great, not rusty, not loose. The keel, thankfully, was not wobbly at all, which was great news. So I used some contact cleaner, which dries out super fast, then scrubbed that gap with a straw brush. More canned air pressure, then started to close the gap by squeezing epoxy resin in there with this bottle that has a needle as a tip. So I could get it all the way in there as deep as it needed to be, and soaked it all up with the resin first. It's 2 to 1. Two chopsticks together. So there's some of the stuff is already in there, pretty good in there, I hope. So this time around I will be adding the silica, fumed silica thickener. I'm gonna stop talking so I don't breathe this. Breathe over here. Fiberglass chop strands from this thick glass mat I had left over, drenched in epoxy resin. Then a saw worked great to stuff or pack this goo in between the hull and the lead keel, leaving as little air pockets as humanly possible. This is not the $5,000 solution to the problem, obviously. $5,000 version will be if this doesn't work. It's actually a bit satisfying. It wasn't terrifying. Then over the gap itself, I did a couple of layers of the fiberglass mat again, soaked with a ridiculous amount of thickened epoxy resin. If I was to do it again, I suppose I would be doing it that next time I haul out next year, is to just go over with several more layers of glass and build the sides like the whole thickness of my hull over the whole thing. Then I used Bondo glass to smooth it all out, and then started the barrier coating. Right. So I just mixed up some of the interlocks, this stuff here, which I bought 4 gallons of. Very expensive. That is not my nightmare. I'm gonna go up there and try to dry it out, clean it up completely, use some of the primer, the epoxy barrier coating in there. Hello again from the future. It is the next summer, actually. As I'm editing this, I figured I ran out of B-roll, so here I am. The next summer, but half a year later, because it's summer in Brazil. And I'm at my dad's house, and such a random piece of information. I'm all about going with different types of like alternative products or no-name brands, but since this is kind of a crucial part of the process to make sure that there are no osmosis, to prevent it and to treat it, since I strip all the way to gel coat, I figured I'd go with a brand that is tried and true. And this stuff, found out, the Interlux 2000E, is quite trusted by marinas and whatever cruising or boat restoration forums I came across. So I just went with that. So I needed 4 barrier coats, and this is a 2-part epoxy primer. So what I found out from Kevin Weeks, and then had to coordinate with him, was that in between, so you could actually wait up to 6 months in between barrier coats, but in between the last barrier coat and anti-fouling, if you're going to put anti-fouling, then you want to not have too long of a gap. You don't want the barrier coating to completely dry out before putting the anti-fouling. So what Kevin taught me is that and it depends how long it would be. It's not a set amount of hours, depends on how hot the day is when you're applying. I think it was pretty hot that day, so we waited about a couple hours, I think. And the rule of thumb is quite literally, you stick your thumb on a paint, and paint should not come off on your thumb. You should see your thumbprint there, but also, it shouldn't be completely dry. So, for the anti-fouling paint, you do need a license. So, the marina owner went ahead and applied that after I applied the last coat of anti-fouling. And that stuff is also great for metal, so I used it on the strut, and I can't think of any other metals down there, definitely not on the shaft. It's great for treating blistering too, but thankfully I didn't have any blisters. But if you do, definitely make sure you find out how to properly remove the blisters, scrape it off, expose it, and whatever you need to do with blisters. Don't just slap the stuff on top of it, think it's gonna solve the problem. That's it. So one day I covered the keel only to test it out. Next day, more Bondo glass, then Farron compound to make it even smoother, to avoid them barnacles from finding a home there again.